To all my studious soldiers out there who consume enough caffeine to wake up a small village, let me give you a couple of tips on caffeine consumption from my 3 years of neuroscience study to help you consume this drug a bit more efficiently. My first tip is that you do not want to drink any sort of caffeinated beverage right when you wake up. If you drink it first thing in the morning, I can assure you you will get a crash after a couple hours, and you do not want a caffeine crash in the middle of the day, especially if you have to study late that night for a test the next day. The worst thing you can do is drink a bunch of caffeine first thing in the morning because the crash is inevitable. What you want to do is push it back later into the day. So let's say maybe sometime later in the afternoon. And that way you'll still get a crash eventually, but it'll happen a bit later in the night. And if you sort of consume your caffeine over a longer period as opposed to just pounding it in one sitting, it'll sort of allow for a more sustained caffeine high and just keep you energized for a longer period of time. So, moral of the story, you want to make sure you're not consuming your caffeine too early, and you want to make sure you're not consuming it all at once. Chill out, take it over a short period of time, and make sure it's later in the day. Now, let's say you only need a small boost, or that you only want to be up studying for a couple hours, but you don't want to be up all night. If you still want the taste of caffeine, one thing that I used to do a lot was basically combine a little bit of caffeinated coffee with a whole bunch of decaf coffee into one big cup. And this is really nice because it sort of helps with that coffee craving if you just want the taste of coffee in your mouth, but without getting sort of that major jolt that's going to keep you up all night. If you just want to stay up for a couple hours, combine a little bit of caffeinated coffee with a ton of decaf, and I can assure you it'll be super satisfying and not keep you up longer than intended. Now, one tip for if you're trying to cut back on your caffeine intake a bit is that whenever you drink any caffeinated beverage, make sure it's as disgusting as possible for you. So if you really love sugary coffee, make sure you're only ordering black coffee wherever you go. This way, whenever you really need a hit of caffeine, you'll sort of force yourself to drink whatever you've gotten, but you won't overconsume whatever you get. So if I really hate black coffee, if I only order black coffee for my study sessions, I'll only drink it when it's absolutely essential for me to stay awake. That way I'm not just pounding a ton of coffee because it tastes nice and it's easier to get down. One tip for when you're up late studying and drinking coffee is to always drink a ton of water as well, as caffeine can be very dehydrating. And when you're doing a late night study session, it can be very easy to just forget to drink altogether because you're just very locked in. So what we want to do is make sure you're drinking a ton of water, because if you're not and you're dehydrating yourself and just not paying attention to this, it can be very easy to get a ton of brain fog. And brain fog is one thing that we really want to avoid. So let's make sure you're drinking a ton of water whenever you're drinking anything caffeinated. Now, one thing I want to point out before ending the video is that before really utilizing any of these tips, one thing we want to do is really just make sure that we're actually minimizing our caffeine intake, because sometimes when you're studying, drinking coffee can be necessary, but it's definitely not necessary to drink every day. And we want to make sure that we're not really making this too much of a habit, because though there are worse drugs to become addicted to, caffeine addiction is not the best. Even if you're a college kid, and I guess we're all staying up late every now and then, but it's really best to not make drinking coffee every single day a habit. I think one thing that's much more beneficial is to just learn how to manage your time a bit better, so that you're not, up till 1 or 2 in the morning every night studying. There are definitely ways to better manage your time so you're not drinking coffee every day. And techniques like this are definitely, much more useful than managing your caffeine better. So one thing we want to do is just make sure we're sort of minimizing how much caffeine intake we're actually getting. Whether this is from, cutting out other like distractions in our day, maybe scrolling reels less, making sure we're just studying more efficiently, not wasting time here and there. But, the moral of the story is we want to be prioritizing sleep. We want to make sure we're not losing too much and compensating by drinking a bunch of caffeine. With that said, if you utilize the tips in this video, I think you will be able to get a bit more out of your study sessions. And when caffeine is necessary, I think this will be pretty helpful to whoever's listening when you need one of those late night study sessions, really just lock in and get the work done. Now, if you're still here, I really appreciate you watching to the end. If you like videos like this, you should probably decimate that like button and even subscribe. But until next time, I'll see you guys.